think a lot of people may not realise what is present in the bay surrounding them, and with so many people using Dublin Bay, them having the ability to see this wildlife right in front of them is incredible without having to travel anywhere. It's right there on their doorstep. The Dublin Bay Birds Project was set up to gather data about the waterbirds in Dublin Bay. Dublin Bay has 2 SPAs, they're special protection areas. They're designated under the EU Birds Directive, so it's quite a high level of protection. The 2 special protection areas cover the whole of the bay, stretching from Sutton all the way around to the West Pier in Dunleary. And considering Dublin Bay is such an important site, not just in terms of Dublin, but in terms of the whole country, we felt that it would be really good to address the data gaps that we had noticed. So we approached Dublin Port once we had designed what we would like to see happening in the bay to address some of these data gaps.
We now understand more about Dublin Bay than ever before, and with this long-term environmental monitoring of the birds and their habits within the bay itself, we then get a better understanding when we move forward with our master plan and looking at what things that we can do that would facilitate both the environment and our own organisation.
There's loads and loads of birds within the port area itself. We have redshank, so-called, for their vividly red legs, and they sort of run around in the water looking for small invertebrates to feed on, and they've arrived here from Iceland to spend the winter here. Another bird we've seen the last few days, curlew, but their birds have come from further north, Scandinavia, even further east than that, and they'll breed in those areas, but they spend the winter here. We know quite a lot about oyster catchers in Dublin Bay. We've been tagging them for the last 5 years. A large bird, they're black and white, they've got a huge, some people call them carrot bills because they've got a huge orange bill, and they'll probe the sand and the mud looking for stuff like ragworms, small mollusks, mussels and stuff. Within Dublin, a really unusual thing is that the Brenkies have habituated to living quite close to humans and using human-made habitats. Places like the grassland fields, the hurling pitches, the rugby pitches, the parks, all those places to feed. So it's one of the only places on the globe we see a wild goose habituate and get so close to humans, and it's a really good opportunity for us to study them. The industrial working parts of the port they support small numbers of the geese. Have habituated to feeding on some of the spilt food material, grain and stuff from the lorries that are loaded from the boats into the lorries there. So certain individuals, groups of up to sort of 200 birds gather there on the actual dock surfaces and the river wall and feed there quite sort of happily between the traffic and the cranes and everything, which is really, really rare. Yeah, so they're quite special. Tagging birds or colouring birds or ringing birds is basically where you catch a bird and you target a specific species of bird, you catch them, and they each get a metal ring. They're called rings, they're just closed rings, and each of those have an inscription where we can identify that individual bird. We're learning lots and lots about the birds within Dublin Bay and outside from those colour rings.
The volunteer element of the project is hugely important. We term it as citizen science because the information, even though they're not necessarily professional scientists, the information that they submit to us as members of the public is hugely beneficial and of huge value. In terms of human health and well-being, I think the existence of nature and wildlife in the bay is so important. I think it would be really great if more people were aware of what Dublin Bay supported in terms of its wildlife.
And by having nature there as a kind of like an attraction and such a variety of nature within Dublin Bay, it's very important to everybody that we protect this for our future generations to go out and see and be involved with.